I have a passion for the world of generating ideas, principally through writing, but other forms of storytelling. And I also have a particular interest and passion for bringing people together around these ideas. The sole objective being, can we continuously explore how we can move society forward? And I'm a person who loves human beings, for just being human beings, but particularly love African people in a very sort of broad definition of being African, which is why we settled on Africa in the world. Africa exists in the world. Africa is not one color. Africa is not even one place.
What appeals to me is the concept of bringing together intellectuals and policymakers to have a frank and open conversation about the position of Africa and what can be done to change it.
I think it is time for Africa to be the continent of the present and begin to realize our full potential.
Because we need to bring together leaders who are actually implementing changes we want to see in the world.
What I'd like to see happen in the continent after all these discussions is, of course, action. You can just be a talk shop, and that can be fun and intellectually stimulating, but it's got to lead to action.
I genuinely believe Africa can be the food basket of the world.
So I'm very optimistic about Africa, but what we need is real action.
So we will welcome the world's brightest, most innovative thinkers across all fields once a year to this wine farm, Spear, in the African town of Stellenbosch, to be in communion with a number of our leaders that, in our best judgment, have the highest potential for having their minds changed, so that they can harvest some of these ideas that they think are applicable to the peculiar circumstances of their societies and implement them.
To be in a community of leaders who are very successful in their individual rights, but come together as a collective to inspire each other, to share ideas about our dreams for the continent.
At the heart of any major transformation, there have been a few leaders who took, into themselves to change things. We need to do that in Africa, we need to do that in the whole world, and I think that's why it's important to get together.
Every one of us has got something exceptional that we are doing.
When you start conversations that are framed by opportunity and by hope instead of by challenges, you move the entire conversation into a different space.
I want to make agriculture sexy, agriculture cool, and thereby make most people to join this revolution.
And one can but hope that there'll be at least in some cases, there'll be a beneficial ripple effect.
So the hope is that over the course of a lifetime, we're able to move the needle, sometimes very quickly, sometimes slowly, but we don't stop. And the context, particularly of doing it here in Stellenbosch and at Spear, we want an environment where we nourish the human soul.
One of the beautiful things that it's been able to do is to create a very healthy balance between formal sessions and a lot of informal discussions, creating the space for people to just exchange ideas.
As you move out and you listen to music or you see the art around you and you just take pause, it's literally just walking from one room to another and you have a minute to just stand and take in, the skill of a musician.
We are all out there trying to make a difference. Sometimes it can be taxing and hard.
Just that moment of pause that it gives you, calibrates you again and brings your heart and your head together in a better way.
I'm taking care of holistically, actually, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and intellectually. I'm really, really blessed to have been here.
There's been a really beautiful balance between seriousness and enjoyment. And I think that is to remind us of the human aspect of development, that we need to be human, that we need to be caring, that we need to be thoughtful when we think of these things.
So reconnecting to that reason for what we're doing and to that passion and to that inspiration is super important, and I think it's definitely one of the things that are happening here this week.
I don't think I've ever experienced a conference that brings those elements together quite like this.
In addition to the very serious intellectual conversations that we have, for example, one that we just had this afternoon about the political economy of the African continent, we want also to make this different from the normal sort of conferences and festivals that people go to imbue it with a certain spirit of our continent, which manifests itself mostly in music and in art.
Music is really something that belongs to all of humanity. Music also allows us to speak about very difficult things without being defensive. It leaves space for talking afterwards. It leaves a space for holding hands afterwards. It leaves a space for forgiving each other afterwards. But you have to actively do certain things for music to matter in that way.
So I think it's important to have that careful balance. Also because these creative processes, when you look at art, sometimes people see art as this kind of frivolous thing. No, you can apply that creative process to development. We are looking for creative ideas. So why not inspire that creativity?
And this is why I'm particularly proud of this inaugural festival and its equal emphasis on the nourishment not just of the mind, but of the spirit. And so our attendees, our speakers, our panelists have been surprised at different points over the course of each day with elements of this really powerful culture to which we are here, which allows even more flourishing of the ideas and the communion that we want to happen over the course of the few days of this festival. So that by the time we come back next year, for an even more powerful experience, we're learning that the nourishment of the soul is a key component of the world of ideas, the ideas sharing that happens on the panels. These things are connected, and that one cannot be divorced from the other. So when we say this is an Africa in the World Festival, we are principally different from many others in the sense of this deliberate integration of both parts. We do not see them as separate. We see the experience as whole.
Whoa, brothers and sisters, when they insist that we're just not good enough, good enough, where we know better, just to look them in the eyes and say, we're gonna do it anyway, we're gonna do it anyway.
My hope is that we will continue to refine and improve upon this.
I'm very grateful to be here, coming from Latin America, because I think we share, both Latin America and Africa, similar challenges, and we don't talk to each other enough. I'm looking forward to leave the event with more connections, hopefully with concrete action plans to do something in a more collaborative way, which I think is super necessary for Latin America, for Africa, and hopefully for the world.
I've really been impressed with the organization. I think I would not want to miss any opportunity. And I actually think it's encouraged me to talk to people that I actually think would also benefit significantly from this. And I just hope, and then we've suggested this to Delhi, that this must definitely not be a once-off event. I think it's going to be very important for us to continue and recreate this sort of environment and just be persistent with it.
My ambition for year 2 is to refine this. We are going to harvest a lot of lessons from this, develop an even better capacity to execute this festival, scale it not necessarily in terms of how many thousands of people you want to attend, but in terms of its potential to have the impact that we seek. The Second thing that we need to be doing better from next year is to start platforming very promising young leaders that we want to showcase on the continent to make sure that they get their heads above the parapet and they get noticed so that they can take charge of our affairs properly.
I think that African leaders must prepare young people to take over. We must have a plan for intergenerational transition.
Next year, I would like to see more people my age, because I think it's so important. If we look at sub-Saharan Africa, now I haven't checked the statistic for a while, but a couple years back, I think it was something like 60% of sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 35.
But one thing that is clear to me that will not change, other than the quality will just get better and better, is the integration of the intellect and the soul in our programming.
So right, she says, oh, take anything that you want from me.
I am grateful to the group CEO of Telkom, Sipo Masejo, for just getting it over the course of a 1-hour breakfast in Johannesburg only a few months ago. Some friends had suggested that he was the sort of business leader who valued this kind of thing, and he mobilized his corporation to support this festival. The initial support we received was from the Eindhoven family, who own the venue where we gathered and who supported us to be able to set the dates in the first place, to concentrate the mind, and to then put all the other things in place. So those two have our thanks. They've allowed us to prove the concept that what we were thinking of in the abstract now actually has become real. And so I'm very excited about the potential for what we can achieve with the Africa in the World Festival.
Well, I just want to feel good every day. I want